Hey, yo, turn it up as loud as it go. Come on, hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
This is Hill and Chill as Fuck the podcast. It's your boy Tristan Mitchell, licensed clinical social worker with Soco Ray Therapy.
And it's me, your girl, Socorro Reynoso, aka Soco Ray, owner of Soco Ray Therapy, licensed clinical social worker.
And this is Robin Dial, associate clinical social worker with Soco Ray Therapy and resident hip hop head with this therapy for us, by us. Hill and Chill as fuck podcast.
We in here, baby.
Let's get it.
All right, guess who's Bizac?
In the motherfucking house.
Hill and Chill as fuck podcast.
We in here, baby.
We are back.
Let's check in real quick. How y'all feeling today?
I'm feeling good today. I don't have anything to complain about. I'm happy to be here. I feel grateful to be able to present information that's helpful. And I'm happy to be doing with y'all too.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's the key. Energy from the squad is good, and it always feels good once we get here. I'm solid. I think the weeks have started to kind of blur together. Most of the, I won't even say trending topics, but because it's not about trending, but a lot of the big things going on are the same shit that's been going on. So it's almost like kind of just feeling the same, like riding the wave, you know, with the ebbs and flows
Of life. How you doing, Robbie Rob?
I'm anxious as fuck.
It happens sometimes, right?
Yo,
For so many reasons.
anxiety is a motherfucker, especially during this time. You know, we're watching all these statistics, you know, rise and fall and things of that nature. And it's been hard to manage a little bit.
To find your center.
As soon as you feel like you kind of going back to normal, then it's like, it's,
8,200 people.
Right. It's like something else. The murder hornets are on their way, you know? You know, I'm just waiting for the locusts and for me to go get some blood and put it over my doorway and just wait for the rapture.
Rob got me excited for the topic. So let me go in and get this drink going. What's in your mug? What you got in your mug?
Well, I already drank on my drink because I'm thirsty.
Today we keeping it
How dare
pretty
you not
simple.
drink poison with us? No,
we gave your fave bartender a little break. So we just low key and we chilling. So we can.
I got my water on deck.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Because that's one of the, we see anxiety and we see depression and we see them together. That is the most, I think, commonly experienced and most talked about mental health issues that we're dealing with. So we want to talk about all of it.
Yeah. If mental health was a couple, it'd be anxiety and depression hand in hand.
Anxiety would be the woman,
right?
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, actually, that's what I'm saying. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. I'm kind of out here like a listener today. Obviously, I got shit to dive in, but
You
I'm
ain't never
looking,
felt anxiety, Tris?
You're
trying to act
what I'm
holier
saying.
than that.
I haven't felt anxiety. What I'm saying is I'm looking forward to these gyms because
Got it.
I'll say as someone who. So I'm gonna save some of this for once we dive into it, but ultimately, was just about to say, have started to struggle with anxiety in my own way, in a recognizable way that awareness of it being anxiety hasn't always existed. So I'd say and you know this happens with therapists a lot, while I'm well versed in helping people manage their own, it's new to me. So it's like that struggle. So that's where I say, I'm trying to listen and give me some gems on how the hell I could cope and manage my damn self. But no, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to this, and you know, just chiming in about those of us who, you know, maybe are just now starting to develop that certain level of awareness to know, like, hey, this is off, or okay, this had a name.
Yeah.
I just thought this was, which I'm sure will speak to all different parts and why we thought it was normal, because at some point. It exists for a reason.
I think
so
generally speaking, we aren't a mindful people. We're becoming more mindful, and so we just act, and then we later regret, and we realize, oh, I acted in that way because I was not in my right center. I was not centered. So mindfulness is an assistive tool to help you understand when you're out of your regulated state. And when I come out of my regulated state, I always ask myself, like, what's going on? What's this actually about? And I'll say that with anxiety, we know that it's serving and it's unserving, right? It helps us and it doesn't help us.
Right.
We still have, like Robin always wants to chime in about, which I think is really helpful, is the primitive mind. That we must remember that we are evolving every single day, and we've evolved from animals who had to check in and see if there was a threat to make sure that they could maintain their livelihood, and the same threat doesn't exist, but our brains haven't yet evolved out of that.
Right.
And I think it would be important. So again, I told you I'm an active listener today for y'all also to us to break down exactly what anxiety is, because I think that's a huge thing that me at 31 just now starting to explore and figure out is what is anxiety. So Rob, if for those listening who may not know, what would you say in a non-super textbook way?
Anxiety is the body's physiological response to a perceived threat or danger, which just basically means that is the system that's set in place to protect us from things that can harm us. It ignites this fight or flight feeling inside of us, which just basically means that if we're in a dangerous situation, for instance, if a bear walked into this room right now, we would have to make a decision, right? We would have to say, I got to get out of here. We might run. We might say, shit, I think I can fight this bear. We might fight this bear, or we might freeze. We might not know what to do, and we might just be still. But it's our response to danger. And anxiety is extremely useful. It's important. It's what's saved your life in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, when anxiety becomes debilitating is when the danger that's perceived, it's like imagined. It's not really an immediate threat, but yet our body is going through the same changes that we would go through if that threat were real. And here. We don't know the difference. Our mind and body doesn't know the difference. It just reacts to what we think is happening in that moment.
I have a really good example, I think. This weekend, so we recorded a podcast 2 weeks ago, and the test was posted, and I said something that's controversial in it, and I knew I did, and I was okay with that. This is my walk. I want to walk freely, and I have a girlfriend who's very protective, and she saw me, and she's like, "Are you ready for that?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is someone who loves me and cares about me. If she's asking me, she's worried." And so there's two parts of why I want to tell a story. The first is that, like, someone else's anxiety can become yours. So you have to be real careful, because I wasn't tripping. I was at a party. I was having a good time. It wasn't a big party. Okay, I'm not stupid. It was only 10 of us. But anyway, I felt her anxiety, and then I noticed myself. This was at a bathroom break where we were talking, and when I came back to the festivities, my body was not in a restful state. And I'm just like, what happened? I was just feeling great. I was like partying on a Sunday. This doesn't happen during COVID. This feels great. It was because I was then worried, like, oh my God, is everyone going to have a problem with what I said? Am I going to lose followers? Will my business crumble because of what I said? And I kept going down this dark, dark tunnel, and I was like, wait a minute. A, that was not your anxiety. B, those are very unrealistic expectations you think that are coming for you. So it was an inappropriate response. It interfered with my day. It was someone else's, and I had to check in and release it and let it go.
Yeah, I would say the thing that I found most helpful. Well, first I would say I have a long history with dealing with anxiety and panic disorder. And so for many years, I experienced anxiety in a lot of different spaces, but I never knew what it was. I didn't learn until I was 28 what that was. I literally thought I was dying all the time. I had went back and forth to the doctor, to the emergency rooms, thinking that something was wrong with me. I had all the tests because my body was reacting in this fight or flight mode, but it had no way to expend this energy or this these chemicals that were moving throughout my body that were useful in a situation where I'm actually in danger. So I just felt crappy all the time. And when I spoke to somebody who explained to me what was going on in my body, it made me feel so much better, because it's like when you're in danger, your breathing becomes more shallow. Your heart rate speeds up. Your blood is rushing to different parts of your body that require you to be strong for those situations. Whereas a person who doesn't know that is like, oh my God, I'm numb and tingly in my hands. I'm like, I can't breathe. I don't feel like I'm breathing well. My heart is pounding out of my chest, and all of these things. Right. And all these things are like, no, actually, this is just what your body is supposed to do in these situations. But there is no immediate situation for you to utilize that energy. So it just becomes, it creates a fear inside of you. You never want to feel that way again, which creates the cycle of anxiety and trying to avoid that feeling. Again. Yeah. So
it's, I think that my example and yours sheds a beautiful light on how anxiety can show up. It's a spectrum, right? It can be very big and it can be small. Either way, it's disruptive. Yeah, right.
And I was literally about to say, speaking to that point where, we kind of talked about in a primitive through the primitive lens, what anxiety was used for, and it just thinks about through evolution, anxiety shows up in ways that I think we would all agree have nothing to do with life or death or fight or flight, but as we've evolved, it's evolved with us. So whether it's in a social situation, if it's something someone said, I can tell y'all for me, myself, I've always now having that self-awareness, being able to identify how anxiety shows up for me. I've always had anxiety surrounding situations that will require me to be in the public eye. So us doing this podcast was dope as fuck to me when it was an idea that we had and when we was just recording and not releasing. So then as it began to manifest itself into an actual product that's going to be released, I can honestly say the day when we had to post our promo videos and stuff, like I was drowning in anxiety, like struggling because it made it real. Yeah. The response was dope and it was overwhelming and it was positive, but for me it was like every like equal, like this is one more person who might be looking at you, and again it requires me to sit with self and kind of explore where does that come from, like why is being in the public eye going to make me feel that way. And I think that's something that we all have to do when we find ourselves in these anxious situations, is trying to explore like where is this coming from. And I think the challenge is sometimes you will be able to identify, but also I'm a big believer that anxiety can also be triggered by the subconscious, and that's annoying as shit, because I think that's more so where it exists for me. So it's kind of like I'm okay, like nothing's wrong, like I literally don't know why I'm triggered.
Yeah, I think that it's a subconscious, and as you become more and more mindful, you can become conscious of your subconscious. And I think what you're speaking to, Tristan, is social anxiety. And we see that a lot. And this is what I found in myself and in my clients. When we present in social settings, social media or otherwise, in real life, and we find ourselves feeling anxious, it often has to do with, we're not worried that they're going to think we're great. We're worried that they're going to find what we know is wrong with us, that's like, because we focus on the wrong, we assume that others will, and that's flawed thinking, and that leads to anxiety. So just imagining that others think like you when in fact you're harder on yourself than anyone else. So like chill the fuck out. And that's just reality checking. And I feel like that happens in therapy. Therapy serves sometimes as just a space for yourself to be affirmed, right? You have a trained professional who's across from you telling you, this is actually what I see as evidenced by these behaviors you've shared with me. I think you might be out of touch with reality of who you actually are. And it serves you to do some digging to realize who you are, all the things you've actually accomplished, not by mistake, that you stand here worthy. And when you walk into spaces with that, and when you post things with that energy, and I'm not just speaking to you, Tristan, I know what you're talking about because I remember it too when I first started on IG with my public page. When you can know that I'm posting this and I have something to offer, what I have to say is valuable, every time you get a like, you're like, I knew it. That's right. It's different energy.
And I think, another part of it too is I think, as we think through anxiety and what it means and how it shows up for us, I think the challenge is that, kind of to your point, the challenge too is we get stuck in our own minds, and a lot of what makes people anxious, and of course there's, like with most things, there's different levels of anxiety, but a lot of what makes people anxious are their distorted beliefs about something. And what you're speaking to is a distorted belief then that I might have about myself, and it's like this assumption that like so the distorted belief may be that everyone is going to recognize something that's wrong, whereas that's not necessarily true. So we also find like a lot of value and effectiveness in helping clients work through that, being able to identify which beliefs are not valid and are not sound versus those that are. And even sometimes when, a distorted belief comes up, I like to tell people sometimes it is a possibility, but it's like them pushing yourself a step further and be like, but what is it doing for me to focus on this possibility while ignoring all of the others that are not as anxiety provoking?
I think the important work, one of the pieces of important work you can do in CBT, cognitive behavioral training, is this, right? Dissecting your thoughts. And then at the bottom of it all is some core belief. Some belief that you hold true for yourself, the world, others, that has been taught to you, ingrained in you through some usually negative experience. And we're talking about anxiety. Some belief you're carrying that does not serve you, that I don't have something to offer, that I am flawed. And I might think that because I wasn't affirmed, or I was abused, or out of all my siblings, I was called negrita, or I was called gordita, or whatever it is, that shapes you. And you think that every space you enter will mimic the space you know. And so we have to like start shedding that and understanding that the home we grew up in is not reflective of the world. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. So the power of therapy, one form is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is discovering your core beliefs, what you hold true, noticing how those show up for you in your mind by watching what happens in your thinking, and battling that core belief and assuming and embodying and adopting this new belief, and then finding thinking and thoughts that align with that new belief, noticing when you have the old thoughts, removing the old thoughts, and feeling better and feeling different.
Yeah, understanding that core beliefs do come from a real place. Like, even if they're distorted or they are not true in a sense, they are shaped by our experiences. So however we view the world, ourselves, others, is based on things that we've experienced and have been interpreted in a way that has created a generalization for us in our world. The thing about core beliefs is that they're not always accurate, and they're definitely not helpful if you're experiencing this anxiety.
Depression,
right. And so restructuring those things to be something that's more understanding of your experiences but realistic to your life is so important in dispelling anxiety, because anxiety starts with a thought, and we all live on autopilot. We're all kind of just going through the world, going through the motions, and doing what we do automatically, and we don't notice these automatic thoughts that come up in our day that inform how we think, feel, and behave. All we kind of do is feel the feeling, and then we respond to the feeling that we're feeling, and we behave whatever it makes us feel most comfortable, whether it be like this situation, like if it were Tristan, this situation makes me feel uncomfortable, I get butterflies in my stomach, whatever it is, I'm not going to do it. So you're reacting to the feeling and you're behaving, but you're not hearing that automatic thought. And that's what's so great about therapy, is that it gets you in tune with that thought that you don't catch, that automatically comes up that says, I'm not comfortable with this because I'm afraid I'm not going to be good, or I don't know what I'm going to say, or what if I stumble? Like all of these different thoughts that come up that we don't even catch. We just feel that this isn't right, this is some impending doom or something, and then we behave in a way that actually reinforces anxiety, like avoidance. Like that's a common thing that people do, that says this situation makes me uncomfortable, so I'm just not going to do it. And with therapy, it's like you get in touch with those automatic thoughts, and that's when you are able to start challenging those situations. Like for me, it was all about like, if this makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm going to do it, because I need to teach my mind that this is nothing to be afraid of, that this is not the end of the world, and that no matter what happens, I'm going to survive and I'm going to be okay. Even if it's a tough experience, even if it's exactly what I thought it was going to be, it's not the end of the world.
You're basically showing yourself what you're made of each time.
And, using, another example I have for myself, and speaking of the subconscious and Robin's point about anxiety, again, in a primitive sense, being physiological, and it's still physiological, is that I think a part of it is, so if I were to share some of my own story, I remember now, like current day, being able to identify it as anxiety. I remember through the years, it randomly came up, but what I did know was this is the feeling I usually feel when something is wrong, or I'm nervous about something. And it rarely ever happened. So then when it started to consistently happen, it had been so long that I almost forgot. But in those moments, I remember having, like, this even before I was a therapist, self-talk with myself, being like, ain't nothing wrong with you. Like, where is this coming from? So now for me, anxiety shows up in that physiological way. And that's where I say it must exist at the subconscious. And, doing that work to connect and bring the subconscious to the conscious. And because just being like, this is like a certain tightness I get in my chest, and I could just be chilling and then it'll come. So it's like I like to say self-awareness is like half the battle. Like now I'm aware of this physiological response. I know that it's usually linked to that. Now the next step might be, okay, now trying to figure out what might be fueling this or where this might be coming from. So that's just an example for me of how else anxiety shows up. Like it's just this random tightness, this feeling can come from nowhere. And of course there are different techniques and stuff that maybe we'll talk a little bit about later that I try to use to relax myself. But I'm just wondering if you guys have other examples of how you've, whether directly or through clients, have just heard about how anxiety shows up, just to make it maybe a little bit more practical for the listeners.
I have a few clients one recently who showed up and said the past week she has been having a hard time breathing. So like it seemed like verge of panic attacks, but it never really came to that for her. And she thought that she was just having a rough week and it was just her body out of whack. And it's like, well, let's talk about what happened before that started. Yeah. You know, what was the thing? And she's like, I think it was we popped Molly's. And I'm like, okay, maybe what else happened after the Molly's? Well, this like traumatic event. Okay, it's probably the traumatic event. Yeah. So just that's one way that it shows up. Other ways it shows up is I have one individual I know who does very large scale events and just concerned that no one's going to come. The tickets won't sell out, even though every event so far has. And just this unnecessary worry where it's like, oh, honey, why would you think that when evidence shows the exact opposite? And imagine what you could do with this energy if you weren't worried about it not being successful. How much better might it be? How much different might you show up?
I will say this, because my specialty is anxiety, professionally and personally. I have a lot of experience with my own anxiety. What a lot of people that I work with have come to this understanding that there is a secondary gain from anxiety and from depression and from a lot of different things that we hold on to. It doesn't seem like it because we're like, this is fucking miserable, yo. Like, why would I want this for myself? I don't want to feel crappy every day. I don't want to avoid places that I might love and enjoy. I don't want to like limit my life. But from speaking from my own personal experience, I was like, I saw my world getting really small because I kept cutting things off that made me anxious. And I was just like, why would I want this? Like, why would I even want to deal with this? And I was thinking like, if I let this anxiety go, what does that mean? If I really, really work on it and trying to heal, what does that mean for me?
It means you have to be brave.
It means I have to show up. It means that there might be some expectations that I don't want to live up to or feel like I can't live up to. That this discomfort is predictable. This other discomfort where like I can't use this as an excuse for me personally is like, I don't want to know what that feels like. And it's like I limited myself from greatness in a way because I was scared of how powerful I could actually be. You know what I mean? Like not just on a failure tip, but on a successful tip. Yeah. Like what does that mean for me to be anxiety free and I could do whatever the fuck I want? I could get on this podcast like, what's up?
And maybe an assumption that if you do big things, the bigger anxiety will come, like avoiding that.
Exactly. So it's like, sometimes I notice a theme with a lot of my clients who experience anxiety is that letting it go means something even more scary. And it's not the uncomfortable feelings of anxiety. It's like, well, I'm used to that. I know how to deal with that. I know how to manage that. But it's like no one expects anything of me. People tell me, oh, Robin's got anxiety or so-and-so's got anxiety. Don't put anything more on them. Don't tell them anything. Don't expect anything of them. So that if I show up, it's like, oh, great.
She's here.
She's here. But if I don't, it's cool because Robin is anxious. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
it's a win-win.
It's a thing where it's like we can look at it from the standpoint of like anxiety is very debilitating and we don't necessarily choose it, but sometimes we hold on to it because letting go of it is even scarier than dealing with that uncomfortable feeling over and over and over again.
I think it also serves us in a way that some of us think we do need a certain level, a healthy level, but some of us think if we let go of worrying, of all this priming and prepping, we won't excel, we won't exceed. And I have news for you. Sometimes the opposite is much more helpful, which is where you act fearlessly and without the anxiety and see what you can really do.
And that comes back to survival mode and this negative bias that we all have primitively in our mind to always know the worst case scenario, always understand it so we can prepare for it. But that's not the reality that we live in all the time. That if we are not able to see the perspective that is less frightening or easier to deal with, then we're able to move forward in the things that we need to move forward, instead of like always thinking of the most catastrophic thing. And that comes back to like what I talk to my clients a lot about is thinking errors and these cognitive distortions, is that jumping to conclusions, all or nothing thinking, that holds us back from this gray area that's going to allow us to move forward in a lot of ways. Instead, it's like, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. I have to be prepared for it. And then it stifles us from moving forward in a lot of ways.
And I think, and you guys will hear us talk a whole lot about what's modeled by parents, because tons of who we are and who we show up as is modeled by how we was raised, in the environment we was raised in. Maybe not even if it's the environment, but maybe some impactful shit that's happened along the way. And I think that just generally speaking, a lot of us are just prone to live in tomorrow because that's what we saw. And I think if we tap into the part about being Black in this country and acknowledging that our Blackness has come with a lot of
fear,
a lot of fear. It's come with tons of moving pieces, and you know, sometimes I think, actually not sometimes, all the times I think anxiety has served us in a way because it's allowed for us to literally, if we're talking about survival, that's what our existence has, that what fuels our existence in this country is having to survive. So we're always trying to figure out those next moves. So no, it makes sense that our parents would have modeled that and their parents would have modeled that. Always, you know, we hear those stories, working multiple jobs because of poverty, doing this, doing that, worrying about, you know, let's have a talk to see, you know, can I try to control and make sure that you make it home safely, because it's not safe out here for us. I think in general, if we're talking about how anxiety has served us, I think us as a people has served us because literally here we live in survival mode, and one wrong move can literally be the end of us. So I think that's worth acknowledging. I think that's worth people considering where you came from, maybe what was modeled for you, or what your experience as a Black person, a person of color, or whatever the listener's experience is, trying to figure out, how has anxiety possibly served me? Allowing for that to allow for you to be compassionate and patient with yourself. But now that you know, you don't have to live and stay there. And I think that that's a tough one, because there is no black and white answer to say, all right, Black folks should completely let go of anxiety, because I'm a big believer that it's not safe for us to navigate this country without a certain level of worry and concern. But also, how do I find my balance so that, again, it's not debilitating, or I'm stuck here, I'm unable to leap and move forward.
So I can show up where I want to show up.
Yeah, and I like that we need to be able to be open about anxiety, because I know for a long time it was hard for me to tell people because it felt like a weakness. And when I think about what I've been through with anxiety, I'd be like,
I'm a soldier.
I'm like,
no limit.
If people knew what I went through, like, they'd be like, damn, how did you make it through that? Like, without, you know what I'm saying? That I just realized how strong I was in that situation. And speaking, I think it's important with any type of thing like anxiety, depression, is like feeling less alone and knowing that other people are experiencing the same things that you're experiencing. Like, this is common.
So common.
People experience it to different extents and different levels and intensities.
I hear people all the time talk about ruminating over something that they said the day before or earlier that day. That's anxiety.
Yeah, these are all
just
forms.
worrying and worrying and worrying, and you're not doing anything with it. I'll tell you this too, that I've had an anxiety attack, and right after I had it, I said, never again. I'm going to my doctor, because my body actually can't withstand that.
Yeah.
My mind, my heart, my soul, I won't do that again. And I was prescribed 5 nice little, I think it was 5 milligrams Xanax, and I kept them just in case. And I want people to know that a therapist has taken it, okay? Like, it's okay. Don't abuse it. But sometimes I feel like if you aren't able to think clearly enough to process your thoughts and recognize metacognitions, you have to be grounded somewhat to get to that place. Medication can be a tool that can help you ground so you can think clearly and not exhaust your body. Because the way I was imagining my panic attacks, I'm like, this shit is beating up my nervous system. Like, I don't know how much more it can take. So I am a proponent when necessary and when not abused.
Yeah, when anxiety is out of control, because there's a biochemical reaction in your body, you're releasing cortisol, and that's not supposed to be a chemical that's constantly going through your body. So if you're having that reaction constantly, it's making you more susceptible to health problems, like infection, like physical health problems. Like, it suppresses your immune system. It wears on your organs. If anybody's had anxiety for a long period of time, it usually affects your digestive system. People experience acid reflux, GERD, all that tension that we're experiencing, IBS. This can have a physical impact. So if you are at that point to where you cannot manage on a daily basis, I encourage people to talk to a psychiatrist and get stable so that physically you can be in a better place and mentally you can be open to the things that you need to hear in order to help work through that, because it's a combination. You have to have both. You can't just put a Band-Aid on a sore, you know what I mean, and expect it to heal. There's also other things. You've got to make sure that it's clean and all of that. It's like, if you think about it, we got to look at mental health like we do physical health. If you broke your leg, you know what I mean, and you would, put whatever, a cast on it, but then eventually you would go to physical therapy so you can regain your ability to walk. And
you would use what's available to help you recover.
Right. You'd be taking painkillers until the pain subsides enough so that you can move forward to that physical that physical work that you need to do. And the same thing with mental health. It's like you got a broken anxiety bone, you know what I'm saying?
Go let the doctor talk to you about it. Right. And just to chime in with you, Rob, I know some people feel like, I don't want to see a psychiatrist, that means I'm crazy. Okay, well, if you think that way, a doctor can also, your primary physician can also prescribe some anxiety medication.
And
as
it's
well.
not forever. Like, this is not this idea that once I take something, that means that that's just my life forever. Or it's, I know there's a lot of stigma around mental illness and medication, but if you are out here with high blood pressure and you go and take a pill to manage your high blood pressure, and then you start to eat healthy and your blood pressure regulates and you can get off that medications, it's the same thing with mental health. It's like sometimes you just need something to help you get to where you need to be so that you can start doing the things that are healthy for yourself so that you can maintain it on your own.
For those folks like myself who obviously I totally agree with you guys. For those who maybe don't feel like their anxiety is necessarily to that point, or just those who are just becoming familiar, I think, again, going back to the fact that I think a lot of us, and when I say us, I mean Black folks, a lot of us don't even necessarily know what our anxiety is because it's just been a part of us and so ingrained in us. As you start to become familiar, what are some coping skills or techniques that you guys kind of encourage people to tap into?
Well, you guys know what I always talk about is mindfulness. I think that the first thing is you have to understand yourself and your inner workings and know what your body feels like when certain emotions are present, and being aware of what my regulated state is like, what my dysregulated state is like, and then moving into the chain. And this is my approach, moving into the chain of, okay, what am I thinking about right now? Is that thought true? If not, what is a more true thought? And being kind to myself through that process, because it gets frustrating when you're trying to change the way you feel and start noticing your thoughts. You're going to become real upset because it's hard to battle thoughts, and you're going to see the same old dumbass thoughts show up, but you got to be like, oh, okay, Socorro, you're still worried about that thing. Remember, you're 36 now, not 15. You have control over your life. So just like those reminders, and then replacing your thoughts, constantly replacing your thoughts, and basically you are acting as a coach for yourself to retrain your thinking. And please know this, guys, as long as you've been alive, it won't take as long, but it's going to take a minute, longer than you want it to undo the ways that you think. So this is a process, it's a journey, it takes discipline, it takes practice, it takes a long time, but keep at it and you will become a master of your own mind.
Yeah, I'll just add a little something to that. Especially what I like to do for myself and for my clients is that I love coping statements, like realistic coping statements that, like, yes, acknowledging the situation, but also recognizing the reality of it. Just even if you're having a panic attack, your body cannot withstand a panic attack for more than 15 or 20 minutes. Your body will eventually, its systems will kick in and it'll do what it needs to do to protect you. That's why you might feel foggy or like you can't concentrate or you can't remember things. Our body is made to protect us. So we might feel uncomfortable even when it's like getting us out of this state. I like coping statements that are realistic and that make us feel better, in the sense of like, if I'm in the midst of a panic attack, I might not have the faculties to go into my coping skills and be mindful and deep breathing and grounding and all these things. I might need to just tell me like, this feels like shit, but it's not going to last forever. It never has. I've been through this before and I've always made it through. Yes, this feels uncomfortable, but it's not going to kill me. I'm not going to die. You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that I have to tell myself in the midst, like, yes, I feel this is horrible, but it's only going to last. Knowing that knowledge of like, okay, panic attacks usually don't last for more than 15 minutes. I'm going to be okay in 20 minutes. Or like, I have the tools when it's time to implement so that I can feel better, whatever that might be, relaxation skills, deep breathing, whatever it is, that I have the tools when I get to a place where I can really utilize those tools. But like right now, it's just like, I got to tell myself that this is how I feel, but it's not forever.
That's good.
Absolutely. And that being said, we're definitely interested in hearing everyone's thoughts. Those who care to share, Heal and Chill AF on Instagram, hit us in the DMs and just share just maybe what your journey with anxiety has been. And also, as we touch on just how anxiety have served us as Black folks, I love to hear more stories. Robin said she was 28. I'm 31, like, and we're just now figuring it out. And I know for a fact that other groups kind of like, you know, this awareness is instilled a little bit sooner and earlier. So I would just love to hear more stories about how those of us, you know, who look like us are discovering their anxiety, how it's shown up, like how old were you, just some of that. So hopefully we can all use that to normalize our experiences amongst one another and go from there. So who we shouting out this week? Which dope ass therapists of color would we like to use our platform to highlight?
We would like to highlight our brothers on all the coasts, actually, the brothers of Melanated Social Work. We feel like they're kind of our counterparts, right?
Yeah.
We're the West Coast collective. They're mostly East Coast. They're dope brothers who started an organization. They're active in academia, which is important representation for social workers and the change that we need to see in social welfare and social justice. So hit them up at Melanated Social Work on IG.
Check out their Mindfulness Mondays.
That's
like
right.
those. I enjoy
Oh
those.
yeah, those are hella good.
Yeah.
That being said, if we had to leave a little something with the people, a gem or a takeaway, ultimately what we would encourage and invite everyone to participate in is just incorporating the act of, it's rooted in mindfulness, literally kind of describes mindfulness. Just practice bringing yourself back to the here and now. Again, we live in the future. We're worried about tomorrow. Or like Soko said, we're ruminating over something we said in the past, and rarely is it that we know how to just be fully present in this moment. It's like we're always waiting for, once I pay off this, that's gonna be dope. But then it creates this cycle where you're always looking for something. Learn to appreciate the here and now. When you find yourself straying away, and as you develop an awareness and you catch yourself all off into whatever, pull yourself back, and you can simply share with yourself, I strayed away for a minute, but I'm back in this moment. Let's start all over. And just really training your mind to appreciate what's happening now, right in front of you, the people in front of you, around you, and not just being stuck in the future or in the past, but
Because you ain't there yet. Chill out.
And you ain't there no more. So
Right.
Let it go.
But we appreciate y'all, and we can't wait till next week to get back to it.
Peace out.
All right.
This has been an Inclusive Media Podcast Studios production.